Good morning, everyone. I think we'll just give people another minute or two to arrive, but welcome to the Pilotlight webinar this morning. I'll do introductions in a minute or two and just explain about the webinar formats, but we'll just allow people another minute or so to come in. Thank you. Right, good morning, everyone. I think we'll make a start. So just to set the scene for those of you that might be new to webinars and are maybe used to attending meetings with Zoom, a webinar looks quite different. So you'll just see the speakers at today's event, and you won't see the other attendees, and you won't see yourself up if you're an attendee. And all attendee videos and microphones are disconnected for this session. But there is a chance still to interact by putting your comments up or your questions up in chat. And there's also a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And that's been manned by my colleague Cheryl, who will feed back any comments or questions in the chat as we go through the presentation. And just a note to say that as the other sessions, we're recording this for posterity, and we'll be saving it up on our Neighbourhood Network's YouTube page in a couple of weeks' time, and there'll be access to links to that if people are interested. So thank you very much for your time and interest. And I'm going to stop my screen for a second and just do some introductions. So as I said, my name's Heather Calvo, and I'm the CEO of Neighbourhood Networks. And we have benefited quite recently from a Pilotlight process where you've engaged with people from a kind of business background. So I'm here with Richard Moore and Frank Robertson to share a bit about that experience. Richard, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks Heather, and thanks for inviting me along today. My name is Richard Moore. I'm Programme Manager for Pilotlight and working mainly in Scotland, but UK-wide on occasions too. That's me. I'll pass over to Frank just quickly. I know, Frank, you're going to introduce yourself more formally in your piece, aren't you, coming up?
Yeah, yeah, Frank Robertson. And just to echo what Richard said, it's a real privilege to be able to join this meeting today. And I'll talk a bit about my background later, but really happy to be here and help.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, both of you. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and Richard, you're going to kick off this morning with just a bit of information about the programme and the process. So.
Okay. Thanks so much, Heather. I don't do a lot of this, so bear with me if I stumble about a little bit, but I'll give it my best shot. Yeah, just a bit of background on Pilotlight. We've been going, we're a social enterprise, we've been going since about 2003, and we were set up by the person who founded Comic Relief in London, and in her networks she had quite a number of very senior business people, and they thought about a method that they could create together that would be a way of bringing businesses and charities, social enterprises together. And they came up with Pilotlight. And the idea was to source senior business leaders and match them with charities and then work together on a strategic focused program. So that started in 2003, and we've worked with about 1,000 charities to date, and we're a social enterprise ourselves, but I'll explain a bit more about that as we go through. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Frank Robertson, who is one of our members, Pilotlight members, one of the senior business leaders that really embodies the value and impact that we bring is really within our Pilotlighters. Thanks, Heather. If you can move on, please. Thank you. Okay. So we've grown from having really a single program, which initially was a 12-month program. Oh, can you go back? Thanks, Heather. A 12-month program where we would put together 4 senior business leaders, try and match their skills as best as we can. We would then contact charities, or sometimes they come to us. We like it when they come to us, and we match the 2 together. And each project has a project manager who looks after the general day-to-day management of the process, the facilitation in meetings. And we meet over a period of 10 months for about 2.5 hours at each meeting. And we also bring in board members. Occasionally it's staff who've got specific skill sets come and join us as well. We've also been running a 6-month version of this in Scotland only over the last 2 or 3 years, which is slightly more intensive. So the idea is that we have a coaching interaction. So the Pilotlighters are really there to coach the charity leader, the board, try and get them to put in place changes they're looking to make to their organization. So it's very much about Pilotlight's approach being about enabling, empowering that leadership governance to put a strategy in place around the things they'd like to do. As a Pilotlighter that worked for a number of years always says, ultimately, what do you want to do? And I think that's the bit we try and get out of the charity and the charity leader. So Pilotlight itself, as I mentioned, is a social enterprise, and we offer all of our programs free of charge to charities and social enterprises. Any charity that's tackling some form of human disadvantage, and we work with every kind of charity within that field you can think of. We tend to focus on smaller organizations. So most of the charities we support have a turnover of less than 5 million. I know 5 million is actually quite big, but we don't work with too many above that. Over the years, we've developed a number of other programs with our corporate partners. So Frank is an individual member of Pilotlight. We also have corporate partners who provide us with their senior business leaders who we also match on teams. We have good cornerstone relationships with some quite big global companies too. So really the role of the Pilotlighters is to act as coaches, somebody who's there as a critical friend. They work as a team. And I think what's unique about the Pilotlight program is that you have 4. It's not mentoring with a one-to-one. So you have 4 lots of goodness to help you on that journey. And I think that in essence, giving you a team as a charity is really quite powerful. And you get 4 different perspectives and a huge amount of complex skill sets to use during your journey. And I think at the end of this short presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about Heather's journey and how some of the things that she's taken out of that as well. It's very important that Pilotlighters themselves come into this process as our members to get value for themselves too. It's very much a mutually beneficial environment. I think that's very important. But ultimately, Pilotlighters are there to learn about the third sector, to share, and in my experience, they make amazing trustees. So that's also another great reason to take part in Pilotlighters. We're a great source of finding really high quality trustees for your board. And so the things we can do, if we move on, sorry, Heather. So this is just a sort of visual snapshot of what the process looks like. There's really 3 key phases to it. The first phase is really about discovery. It's really important for Pilotlighters to really get underneath the skin of the charity, to understand what makes it tick, to understand its culture, its challenges, and before it really runs towards solutions. And it's very important principle that we have. I think it's quite easy to get in a room and come out with many, many ideas, but actually are they ideas that are doable, and are they the things that the charity wants to do? So we very carefully manage how we roll that out. So various things that we tend to do. We will always try and visit a charity site. I think it's important for Pilotlighters to actually meet the wider team, meet stakeholders, listen to the stories, because everything we do is really about the story of what we do. And we will also run other sessions, such as an impact mapping session, just to get a sense of how the charity is having impact, what gap it's meeting. Another key aspect of our process is conversations with the board as well, because boards, charity boards, in our experience of Pilotlight, they also need help. It's a lonely journey being a trustee. Sometimes it's a difficult role. You're a volunteer, but you're not that kind of volunteer. You've got a very specific role, and it can be quite challenging to come together as a board team. So we really help with that as well. Then we get to the sort of early middle part of the process, and it's important we take stock and review what we've learned, where we've got to. And it's also really critical at this point we come together and agree what we're going to work on, because one thing we want to avoid in our process is having too many circular conversations, which are always very interesting, but are they really taking the charity and the charity leader and board to where they want to go? So we do put a good bit of time into that. And then we work together to try and create solutions to not always problems, sometimes they're opportunities. So it can be, the project can be about looking at a fantastic opportunity a charity has got and saying, well, let's help you get a really good structure to benefit from this. Things like you suddenly get a huge amount of funding in, more than you expected. I know that's not a common theme of our sector, but it does happen. How do we spend this money? What do we do with it? Who do we need to make this happen? Where are we going to end up? Ultimately, our process is about giving you a longer term plan on how you're going to get to the horizon that you've targeted to reach. Our other programs are different. Some are a little bit more consultancy based, but based on the same principle of sharing skills, sharing business skills, and taking a strategic challenge forward. Okay, Heather, thank you. So I think at this point, short and sweet from me, Frank, if it's okay, I will pass on to Frank, who's one of our Pilotlighters.
Thanks, Richard. I was going to give you what my background was to start with, and there's some bullets here. I work for BP Petrochemicals for 38 years, and on the slide you see I was fortunate to, well, the last 22, 23 years I worked outside of the UK, and I listed some of the countries there: Switzerland, United States, Belgium, Hong Kong, Indonesia. I think that's actually a positive for me, because you're exposed to a number of different cultures. I learned, for example, in Asia, when somebody says yes, that means they just heard what you said. Doesn't mean they agree with you. So lots of little things like that. My last role, I was based in the US. I was head of technology and licensing for BP Petrochemicals, and I retired from BP in October 2018. And I had a vision. I'm not a golfer. I used to be a grave digger at one point, so I'm good at digging holes, but I'm not very good at gardening. So golf's out, gardening's out. So what the hell am I going to do with my time? So my vision was, okay, I'm going to do some traveling with my wife if she behaves. And then I wanted to continue to do some technology consultancy, which I started. I did become a student at Edinburgh University, so I'm a student again, and I'm doing ad hoc studies in history and archaeology because I want to, and I'm allowed to do that, so I'm doing that. Sport. I just did my 20th Great North Run last year, and I swore I would never do another one. But, you know, my memory is a bit faulty sometimes. So I've signed up to do another one in this year. So I still do half marathons. I do a martial art, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My son's got me involved in that. I'd like to say we're not a competitive family, but we are. So that can be fun as well. Watching football, very painful at the moment with St. Johnstone. Hopefully we won't get relegated. And I love watching. I used to play a lot of rugby, and I love watching rugby. And then the last one, which is very relevant, I thought, look, I need to do. It's a bit cheesy when you say I want to put something back into society, but I did, and so I was looking for charity work. So if you flip to the next one, Heather. So, oh yeah, I meant to say I failed in my mission to retire. So I'm back full-time working again. I'm head of licensing for another petrochemical company called Plastic Energy. I started last year consulting for them, which then led to a job with 4 days a week, which has now become 5, and maybe it's a bit more than 5, but I am enjoying it, I have to say. So I am gainfully employed again. I'm not sure for how much longer, but I am at the moment. If you flip to the next slide, this is about how did I get involved in Pilotlight, and then specifically.
Sorry, to trigger happy, thanks, sorry.
That's okay. And then how I got involved with Neighbourhood networks. So I remember I had read an article about Pilotlight in a newspaper a long time ago, and I filed this away and thought this is a good organisation to get involved with. So I contacted, I think, the London office to begin with, and then I got in conversation with Richard, and I signed up to Pilotlight. And my first project was North Ayrshire Women's Aid, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. Sort of Richard had given me some sort of briefing, and you know, I didn't know what to expect. So I was involved in this project with Women's Aid, which I found I wrote it here, and it's true, very humbling. Meeting survivors of in Women's Aid, meeting the board, meeting the management of Women's Aid, and for me it was, you know, I had a very, I said, fruitful experience there, and I did. And as Richard mentioned, sometimes that leads to other doors opening. And one of the board members of Women's Aid actually is the CEO of a charity called Scottish Families Affected by Alcohol and Drugs. And I guess I must have said a few of the right things during the Pilotlight. And she said, would I like to be a board member for Scottish Families? And I agreed, very happy to do that. And I'm still a board member there. And then, you know, the next project that came up with Pilotlight was with Neighbourhood Networks, and I think we skipped to the next slide. Yeah, I'll just jump to what I've learned actually, and the first thing is that as a Pilotlighter, I'm not in charge. I mean, sometimes you'll get information from the charity, and you know, there's a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of numbers, and you know, I can look at all this information, and I can say, okay, I've got this sorted. You know, I've got this sorted in a couple of hours, and I'll go in and tell them what they need to do. That is not how it works, and I know I'm not in charge, and you know, this is a process. And this is something that I practice in all my life, actually. Listen more than I speak, and listen carefully. And I am not embarrassed to say I don't understand that. And sometimes I do understand. I just want to hear it again. And I'm not embarrassed to do that. And you know, ask clarifying questions. That's the objective. And what have I learned? I've learned from, I'm now on my 3rd project now, and I believe that I can help and make a difference. And for me, what are my benefits? What do I get out of this? You know, I get to meet, you know, 3 people that I'm going to work with in a particular project. I would have 0 chance of meeting these people if it wasn't for Pilotlight. So my own network gets bigger and bigger, and you know, these people range from, you know, I'm basically, you know, sort of financial engineering hybrid type person. I understand numbers, and we get people on the team that are marketing people. And I think, what the hell are they talking about? I don't understand marketing, but I can learn. And so it's a learning exercise for me as well. And then even more importantly is to meet people in the charities. And for me, that means, it means the CEO typically. It means meeting with board people, but also members of the charity that benefit from the charity. I would never, ever have a chance to meet these people. It just would not happen. And it opens up your eyes. It opens up my eyes, sorry, to a world that, you know, I don't know. And it's, you know, it's Women's Aid, it's neighbourhood networks, and the one I'm working on at the moment. You know, I live in Perth, and I'm working with Perth Vision at the moment. These people that have, you know, problem with their eyesight and problem with their hearing. I could never meet these people before, not a chance. And so there's a massive, massive, you know, opportunity and privilege for me to be able to help people. Try to anyway, and you know, just use my business experience wherever I can. I'm not sure. Do I have another slide, Heather? I can't remember. Yeah, this is where we're kind of tagging here. What I wanted to say about what I try to do in these meetings, and Richard somewhat paraphrased what I was going to say before. One of my big questions, and it was a big question actually to Heather. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you know, what is the vision? Where do you want to be in 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And that's a sort of very open question you can ask at the beginning, and then you know, you hear about something about the vision, and so you're there to listen, but the other thing you're there to do is to challenge. And I remember distinctly talking with Heather about my challenge was, yeah, that's great. Neighbourhood networks doing really well here, and everything going, you know, what do we say? It's going peachy. It's marvelous. But my challenge was, well, why don't you expand? And why don't you move to, I remember it was Stirling because it was the one nearest. And we had a little pre-meeting here before we started. And, you know, Heather was very kind to say that, you know, they are working at Stirling now. So my very next question was, why are you not doing it in Perth? Because that's the next one along. So it's about that, is what is the risk? What is the downside of making that step? What are the risks? And it's not to be foolish, and it's not to take risks. It's to say, yeah, you can do this. Have confidence to do this, and have confidence to move forward. But what you can do is clearly move into another area, and then you know there's a problem in one of the existing areas because you've spread yourself too thinly. And so it's sort of this back and forward between the Pilotlight people and the charity and the board. Because I could, for example, say to Heather, okay, let's do Stirling, Heather. Heather agrees with me, but actually, we need to bring the board along on that decision as well, and the members. And so we in Pilotlight get the opportunity to talk to the board members as well, and we're there to support Heather. That's the point, to support the CEO. One of the things I don't want to miss, because in case I forget it, is I think one of the things I absolutely loved about neighbourhood networks was the way that you had a member and a board member working together. And I've never seen that before. I haven't, and I thought it was marvelous. And the opportunity for me to meet some of the members and hear their experiences was a complete eye-opener for me. And again, I've used the word several times, but I mean it, it was a privilege, absolute privilege. So I'll stop there and see what else we want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Yeah, some great. I'm going to call them memories there, but it really sums up what we try and do. We try and create that really safe space to have some really difficult conversations, and I think anybody who works in our sector understands that it's quite delicate in many ways, and a lot of volunteers involved, a lot of people who have a passion for what you do as a charity. And sometimes change is really quite terrifying, because you think, if we rock this boat even a little bit, then what's going to happen? And I think charity leaders and boards and staff need that safe space sometimes, supported with really quite deep understanding, to have those conversations, to feel confident that what they're planning to do makes sense to somebody who doesn't work with them. And I think that's what we also bring, is we bring in Frank's perspective, which is very different. And I think you need sometimes a critical friend to be someone who almost you haven't met before, who can see what you do with fresh eyes, who can bring another way of looking at things into the room. And that's what we're starved of, I think, in our sector. And it's really the foundation of what Pilotlight's about, is saying we recognize that even in Scotland, where there's 26,000 charities, we're quite a siloed place. I think we have wonderful organizations like Neighbourhood networks who are all about the networks. But if you go wider across Scotland as a whole, very few of our networks are particularly well connected. And I think we don't maybe put enough emphasis on how important the networking is. Heather, I suppose turning to you, it would just be really good to maybe share your reflections. What was it like to go through it, and what are you taking, and what did you take away?
I think you just used the term a deep understanding, and I felt through the process that I think the Pilotlighters came, and I think there was a lot of listening, a lot of asking questions, and I felt that you had quite a deep understanding of our organisation and the challenges and the opportunities. So I felt confident, I suppose, at some of the challenges that came back to me on the back of the work that you did to learn about the organisation. I think we entered the Pilotlight process quite early doors into lockdown. And I suppose probably when we were considering it, it was a bit, is this the right time to be doing this? Because it was a time where across the country, people were just bedding down and getting on. Actually, it was probably one of the best times we could possibly have done it. One of our big things about entering the process was to talk about growth. And I think the Pilotlight process has been really transformative for us around growth. It has given me as a CEO incredible confidence, I think, in the model. It was so reassuring to hear back from people from a more commercial background that we had a viable model and that what we did worked, and we should be pushing it. So I think we had a really newfound confidence to share that message across local authorities. But that confidence was quite infectious. And I think that has kind of spread throughout the senior management team. And growth is a regular thing that we discuss. And some of my operation colleagues have taken it upon themselves to go and have conversations with the local authority areas that they oversee, and have been incredibly proactive at pushing that envelope, so much so that we have got growth in a lot of our existing areas. So it's been really quite transformative from that perspective. The other thing that I was going to touch on is about that networking. In fact, you mentioned that you meet people that you would never have met before. Well, likewise, we met people through the process that we would never have engaged with before, and we have benefited from your networks that you brought to the table as well as the skills and knowledge and challenges and questions you asked of us. You also shared your own networks. So Frank, you had mentioned Scottish families affected by alcohol and drugs. We have now linked in with that organisation. They have been really generous at sharing some of their strategy documents with us. They helped us link into a master class on fundraising to help us build our fundraising strategy. None of those things would have happened without us engaging with Pilotlight. And then the other kind of element of it was we had a guy called John who's in our Pilotlight team who kind of a change management background. And John linked us in with another man called John, who was a bit of a guru and expert in Office 365. Now, we had just made the switch from Office 365 in the January, and then lockdown happened in the March. We were just grappling with this new sort of software and technology. And John came in and helped us write user manuals for all our staff team, and actually got involved and helped us recruit a new technical administrator for the organisation. So again, another incredible network that helped us really bring about a positive change to the organisation. So I really can't rate the process highly enough. Now, I think there may have been some challenges we can touch on in terms of doing it in lockdown, and it was a purely Zoom process. Maybe it would have been different if we'd had the chance to meet in person. Maybe it would have unearthed different things, but I think it was a really positive, incredible experience for us. I said, I really can't rate it highly enough. I think it might feel a bit scary and daunting, but actually they're there to help. They're not there to challenge in an unhelpful way or critique in an unhelpful way. It's just to help you think and having those fresh eyes and that fresh perspective. And for me, it was about the commercial perspective that really helped, I think, us have confidence in our offer to local authorities. So those are my reflections.
Thanks, Heather. And I think that was an important point. I mean, Frank, it might be good to get your reflections on that in the room versus virtual. I know what I like most. I'm definitely an in the room person because I like to talk a lot. But Frank, what about for yourself?
So, as I mentioned, I had the first project was with Women's Aid in North Ayrshire, and I think we had a couple of face-to-face meetings with the CEO and the board, and then with the CEO and staff and survivors, as they're called in Women's Aid. And there is very, very little chance we would have got the information we had without having those face-to-face meetings. So I'm sad actually that we never had face-to-face meetings with neighbourhood networks. So we all know why, which forces us into Zoom, Teams, whatever mechanism we're using. And we did get a lot done. And you know, I certainly was happy with where the project ended, and I think, you know, great progress was made, and that was the tool we had to use. We had no choice, so we had to use that. Would it have been better with face-to-face meetings? I have no doubt it would have been. Maybe we got to different places. Maybe we'd have got there faster. Maybe we ruled things out that we talked about. And it's a bit like this meeting now, is that, you know, I think there's something like 16 or 17 people on. If it was 16 or 17 people in the room, I would know straight away whether I was boring you or not, and I'd stop talking. But I've got no idea if I'm boring you or not, and you might have gone off to make a cup of tea, who knows? So being able to read the room is really important, because when people, you know, start fidgeting or nodding, not nodding to sleep, nodding in agreement, you know, you're kind of on the right track. So I do hope that at some point we do get an opportunity to meet the neighbour. The real people I missed meeting would have been the neighbourhood network members, and we had at least one Zoom call where a couple of people members joined. And I would have loved to, at a break, gone and had a cup of tea and a biscuit with one of them and had a chat. And you clearly can't do that on Zoom, and that was what was missing. And going forward, I hope we get back to these face-to-face meetings. my view.
Thank you, Frank. And the good news is we are going for a blended model now, on the back of this. So we're definitely building back in that site visit, which we'll do face to face. So we are bringing that back in. We have a desire to do that at Pilotlight, bring that back in as quickly and as well as we can. Okay, Heather, I think that's it, apart from some questions, unless you've got anything you'd like to finish with.
Just the other kind of, I think, element of which I kind of wanted to touch on was we did some work on key performance indicators as part of the process, which is I suppose a more businessy approach. But actually, we've really benefited from that and really used that tool. So it's a live document that we come back and we talk about at every senior management team meeting. We share it with the board, and it helps us stay really focused on things. So it's helped operationally. It's definitely helped us talk about growth, about fundraising. It helps us kind of just have a check on the finances. So that's been a really useful tool that we probably would not have adopted if it hadn't been for the Pilotlight process. So there's definitely lots of tools and things that business use that can really help a third sector charity or organisation like ourselves. So again, just another, I suppose, shout out for the process. You don't know what you're going to get out of it until you get into it. So, but there's lots of little gems of things. So, okay. So I think our audience are quite quiet. There's not lots of chat. I just wondered if anybody wanted to ask any questions. Donna, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I was just aware that yesterday morning we opened with our international event, and we had quite a few partners from people like us, like Neighbourhood networks in various other countries, and we've got a couple of them in the audience this morning. So I was just wondering, are you aware of any similar organisations that do the same as you guys in other countries? Across Europe mainly, because that's where our guys are today, but we've also got partners in New Zealand and in other parts of the world, but today's visitors I'm seeing are from Europe.
It's a great question, Donna, and there's one that I know of specifically that is very like us, which is based in Singapore, and you can ask me for their name now, and I can't remember. I can give you the name afterwards. That was set up by a previous chief exec of Pilotlight who went to live in Singapore. I think there are lots and lots of consultancy models out there, some coaching models, but I think the model we have, which is with a team of senior business leaders working with a charity free of charge, that, as far as I know, is quite unique to my knowledge at the moment. But I don't know. I think we're on a new 10-year strategy ourselves, which may include actually working more widely abroad. I think virtual has given, as much as virtual, we've just talked about some of the issues with virtual in the coaching space, but actually, even in the Scottish context, we're working with charities in the Highlands and the Islands, which we probably couldn't have realistically really done effectively until we had a virtual means of delivering what we do. So I don't know if that helps, Donna.
Yeah, so I suppose what you're saying there is that there might be growth for yourself moving forward as well.
Well, I'm always up for moving to a warmer climate. Just say
Absolutely.
the word. I'm gone. As a gardener, especially, I could do with a warmer climate.
Thank you.
I mean, I think you could echo what Richard and Frank have said about the online Zoom version of it. I think it has its limitations. But I also think there were some advantages to it too. There was, from a practical point of view, it was actually easier to bring people together. So, so there were some pluses and there were some negatives. And I think the idea of a blended approach, I think, will probably work really well going forward with the process. And I suppose Neighbourhood Networks, we want to wish you all the very best for it because we have seen the benefits of it. It's a fantastic project. Richard, I know that you had a couple of other things that you wanted to plug before we wrap up.
Is this my shameless plug moment? Okay, great. No, I appreciate that. I did mention at the top of the presentation that we also work with corporate partners, and just to let any charity leaders who are on the call know, or board members, I've got openings to work with Morgan Stanley in May and June of this year. The program in May is a day-and-a-half hackathon with 15 vice presidents in Morgan Stanley around a strategic issue. And I've got a new program in June working with 15 associates. I've got 3 spots for that, 2 spots for the May program. The associates program is actually working on a specific operational issue, and things like, Heather, you talked about your 365 migration. That's the kind of area that we're looking at, and with a very technically based team. All anybody needs to do who would like to be involved is apply on a Pilotlight website, or give me a call.
That sounds great. That sounds fantastic, Richard. So can I just, I suppose, wrap things up by just thanking Richard and Frank for your time today. It's been really appreciated. That was really interesting. I think there's a couple of comments from in the chat. So Kirsty, this has been a really interesting session. Thanks to all the speakers. And I think there was another chat from Andrew to say he's really enjoyed it. So if there's no more questions or feedback, we'll wrap things up for this morning. But again, thank you very much to our panelists and our attendees. A great session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you.
Take care. Good luck, Frank and Richard.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.